Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 15 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Duvall up in Northern California. We're the show that attempts to tell you the top 10 games worth actually spending some money on. Mr. Hoyseth, how are you doing today?
Life is pretty good. It's I got made the playoffs in both my fantasy football leagues, Dave. So that always feels good, right? There's a lot of people that don't have much to play for this weekend. So always good to talk football. We're winding down. We're getting close to crunch time now. So there's some teams that it's either win or go home, as they say. As you might hear some occasional noises going on in the house today. I'm having a new solar system installed on the roof, so just stay with me.
So between Brad and me, we are running at 40% making our fantasy football playoffs. In other words, Brad, I lost in all three of my fantasy football leagues this season. Came close in one, but out of the playoffs. All right, we've got a huge week 15. I believe there are no more buys left. It's a full slate of National Football League games. And I know, Hoyseth, we'll talk about it, but you are super excited about two Monday Night Football games, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, and I got a 2-game lead now after last week, so had a decent week, and so I'm trying to hold on to my, my title.
Just giving back to society. That's all I'm doing.
That's right. Well, I'm going to start with the Thursday night game, which is tonight. We're doing this at about 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, which is always a little bit early to pick games, but generally you probably would want to wait until you get some sort of injury report closer to the weekend. There's always that thing going on, but we'll start with tonight's game, and it's the Rams at the Niners. The Niners are 2.5-point favorites. Finally got a win. Haven't looked real good. The Rams pulled off a great win last week, beating the Bills. But the Rams are a different team on the road than they are at home, Dave. And The Niners now are at a point where it's pretty much crunch time. They pretty much have to win. It's a divisional battle. I just thought the 2.5 was kind of light. It feels like a field goal game. But I kind of feel like the Niners, a lot of that's going to depend on, is Isaac Guerrero going to play tonight? They've had so many injuries. We've talked ad nauseum about that. But I'm going to take the Niners. I'm going to give that 2.5.
Look, I texted you over the weekend. I'm like, I give up on the Rams. I cannot figure this team out from one week to another. Some weeks they look great. Other weeks they don't. Some weeks they totally show up. Other weeks they don't. I think on the road in San Francisco, 49ers absolutely need to win this game to stay in the race for the division at the very least. I like the 49ers a lot in this game, so I'm going to agree with you on this one.
Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy up there. Deebo Samuel people have been critical of him. He's got hardly any catches, and he basically responds by saying, well, I'm not getting the ball. How can you catch the ball if you don't get it? I agree with him, really. I mean, I think I texted you last weekend that it's almost like Brock Purdy doesn't like the guy. He never throws to him. And then, when he does throw to him, I remember there was a game a few weeks ago, it's opening quarter, opening drive. They ran like 3-4 plays. They threw a ball to Deebo, and he made a catch, and he went off because he was tired. He gave it one of these like he needed a breather. And I'm like, come on, dude, we're three plays into the game, right? So I can see on both sides of the coin, but if San Francisco's going to win and continue to win, they got to get Deebo Samuel involved in that offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And you have to remember, I mean, Deebo Samuel is one of those wide receivers that you have to sort of scheme to get open. So, this is on the coaching staff more than it is on Brock Purdy. I thought your blame was in the wrong place, and you should have been blaming Kyle Shanahan, who you're usually just happy to blame for stuff anyways. But the real issue, in my opinion, is Kyle Shanahan and the play calling with regards to Deebo.
Yeah, I agree. And, but I think Debo will get more involved now, especially if Garendo's a little bit dinged
Yeah.
up. They might have Debo taking a few more of those jet sweeps. They just haven't, there hasn't been the involvement that there's been in the past few years with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I love Jennings. He's a perfect wide receiver, so to speak, for Brock Purdy. All right. Is staying in with Los Angeles teams, Brad. My first game of the week is the Bucs at the Chargers. Yeah. Your Jim Harbaugh, head coach there in Los Angeles. The Chargers are actually favored by 3 over Baker and the boys. Look, I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder here. This is probably something you're about to say, but I do not trust Todd Bowles on the road at all in this game. This was by far, there's a reason this is my first game. This was like the easiest game to pick on the slate as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you did steal my thunder. I was going to say, if you're going to give me a matchup between Jim Harbaugh and Todd Bowles, I'm going to take Jim Harbaugh every day of the week.
Yeah.
Um, However, I got to tell you this. I think the Buccaneers are more. I know this is going to fall on deaf ears in a lot of places, right? But I think the Buccaneers are more dangerous with Rachaad White in the backfield than they are with Bucky Irving. I know Bucky's had a great year. He's got a little extra burst, but I think they've always had the rotation mixed up. I think White should be the starter and Bucky comes in on third down situations. But, White's a better pass blocker. He's a better pass receiver, and he can run between the tackles. Bucky just gives you that little extra burst, but he appears like it's it's hit and miss as to whether or not he'll play. So that puts a little different wrinkle into things. But I'm with you. I'm going to take Harbaugh. I'm going to take the Chargers, and I'm going to give the 3. And it'll be another game that lasts about 2 hours and 45 minutes.
No, exactly. I like Bucky a lot as well, and you know how I feel about Baker, but this is going to be a rebound game for the Chargers. Chargers are going to win this. It's not going to be, like a 20-point victory, but they will cover. And I like them a lot at home at SoFi.
I think I lost you there very briefly, Dave, but I'm now connected again. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I was going to say, Brad, SoFi, this might be the first time in the history of this Los Angeles Charger team that they actually have a home field advantage at SoFi. I don't know how many Tampa Bay, do the Bucs fans follow their team around the country like the Bills do? Are there a lot?
I don't know who's following Todd Bowles around. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Chargers are going to win this for sure.
Probably the most marquee game of the week this week is the Bills at the Lions.
Yeah.
And I'm playing the over-under in this one, which is sitting at 54.5. And I think everybody's looking at last week's score with the Bills and how they gave up a ton of points, ended up losing the game, and what was a great performance by the other team. And then you got the Lions, who just seem to score at will. I'm going to take the under, though. 54.5 I thought was pretty high. I get a sense that Dan Campbell is going to have something, cooked up to stop Josh Allen a little bit, or at least kind of lighten that point total for them. And I still think the Bills, even though they didn't look very good defensively the other night, I think that is it's been a strong point for that team for the last few years. So I'm going to take the under there. I thought 54.5 was really high. I expect a little bit more of a defensive battle.
I look at this game and I think ESPN's 30 for 30. I think both teams are going to score 30 at minimum in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and take the over. I was, definitely scared about that line, which you should be scared about. But look, the Lions defense has not been good. And they have been giving up a significant amount of points. We know that the Buffalo Bills offense is actually, at times hits on enough cylinders to make any game close. Yeah, at the very least, one of these teams is going to be in the high 20s and the other is going to be in the 30s. So that's my, if you will, reasoning for taking the over in this game.
I see a few turnovers. That's what I see, Dave. And they're both teams that can run the football a little bit. The Lions have as good a running game as anybody in the league. And the Bills now with Cook, I think, are a much better running football team than they've been the past few years. I just think that they're both gonna get the running. I suspect we'll see a couple of turnovers, and that thing's going to be a little lower scoring than people think.
All right, Mr. Hoysef, if you were voting for most valuable player in the National Football League as it stands right now, and you could only pick between Josh Allen and Jared Goff, who are you taking?
Sorry, I lost you again, Dave. I don't know if your internet is going in and out or not, or if it's mine. Mine seems to be pretty stable. So,
yeah, I think I'm pretty stable here. So, if you had to pick between two players for the most valuable player this year, Josh Allen or Jared Goff, who are you picking?
I'm picking Sam Darnold, Dave. That's who I'm picking.
That wasn't an option.
Yeah, I mean that Sam Darnold's got the Vikings at 11-2. We expected the Bills and the Lions to be good, right?
Well, we expected the Lions to be good. I don't know that we expected the Bills to play as well as they've played so far this season. So.
If I was going to choose between those two, I mean, Goff's had a great year. It's kind of hard to deny that, but I don't think it's all Goff. I think he's got the best offensive line of football. The guy almost never gets touched.
Yeah.
And that will help you win a lot of football games. Josh Allen, however, tends to do things on his own. So I don't know. Two rules of thought, probably the numbers belong to Goff, but I think probably the more valuable player to his team is Josh Allen.
Yeah, I agree. I go Josh Allen on this one. All right. Another marquee matchup, especially if you live in the state of Pennsylvania, the Steelers at the Eagles, playing the over-under in this, Brad. The over-under is 42.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the over. I believe that the Eagles offense will sputter a little bit in this game. I think the Steelers offense will sputter a little bit in this game, and we're going to get into the second half of it, and things are going to open up a little bit. Not sure what the weather forecast is. Probably should have tried to hunt that down before doing this podcast today, but I like the over a lot in this, assuming weather isn't going to be an issue.
Yeah, this was a puzzling one to me. I went back and forth a few times and didn't really feel comfortable with it. It's not one I would have picked, but
that's because you hate Pennsylvania for some reason. I don't know what you.
Yeah, well, I think the weather is going to play a factor, and I think it's two teams that play pretty solid defense. So I'm going to actually go and take the under in this one. I think it's more of a 23-16 type game, something like that. It's going to be tight though. It's going to be close to that window of 42.5. It does seem a little bit low, but I like the defenses here more than the offenses. And I say that the Steelers and Eagles is just one of those old-fashioned smash-mouth football games. Two teams that are located, in the same state, and fan bases are, they're quite a bit different despite the fact that they're in the same state. But nonetheless, I see a good, heavy-hitting, close, tight battle all the way to the end of that one.
Smash Mouth, one of my favorite bands from I think the 90s. Maybe the drifts into the 80s a little bit. This to me has overwritten all over it. Saquon's going to get his yards. The wide receivers for the Eagles are going to break down that secondary at some point. And the Steelers have been surprisingly better on offense over the past month. So I'm going to stick with the over for sure. By
the way, I like the Steelers to win that game, Dave. I'm just going to say that right now.
I like the Eagles to win the game.
My next game is the Bengals at the Titans. I think the Bengals are going to go on a little run here and kind of make things interesting. Like maybe they could make the playoffs. They finally got over the hump and got a win. They're a 5-point dog. I don't think they've been eliminated yet, have they, Dave?
No, not yet.
Yeah, so they're a 5 point favorite actually on the road at Tennessee, a team that really doesn't have much to play for. Will Levis probably hurt now, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the Bengals, who I think are just going to go on a little run here at the end of the year. Jamar Chase has just been, putting up phenomenal numbers, and I think the Bengals are just a better football team. So I'm going to take Joe Burrow and the boys on the road.
This was an easy one for me. I completely agree with you. Joe Burrow and the boys on the road makes a lot of sense to me. The Titans have played, hard enough football to secure their head coach's job, I think, for another season, but it's an organizational issue there in Tennessee at this point. And the Bengals are currently 5-8, Brad. They have a 1-game winning streak. Break out the presses. So they absolutely have to win. But look, the Bengals aren't the New York Jets. The Jets have been officially eliminated from the playoffs at this point. Always good to see Aaron Rodgers out of the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's official now, Dave. I did have a little thing come across my screen that said your internet connection is unstable. So there you have it. That would explain why I didn't hear you for the last 45 seconds.
we will carry on, Brad. We will carry on. Dolphins at Texans. The Finns are not favored in this game. Texans actually favored by 3 coming off of a bye week. I like the Texans a lot. A little bit of rest should get them some time to actually figure out what's wrong with that offense. I'm not sure they can fix it. It's clearly at this point an offensive line issue. CJ Stroud is basically a shell of his former self from last season. But at the end of the day, I think the Texans are actually going to beat the Dolphins. I can see it now, and I can hear you now going all off on Tua and how great the Dolphins are and how the season's not over yet, blah, 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 blah. But I like the Texans in this one.
To me, this one's really about the matchups, Dave. And there's 2 things that I really like about the Dolphins in this game. And you're right, I am going to take the Dolphins. I'm going to take the 3 points. First of all, Nico Collins is going to face Jalen Ramsey, which is still, at his age, one of the better cover guys in the league.
Yeah.
The Texans do have a terrible offensive line. I mean, that's clear. That is the problem, by the way.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that the Texans defense gives up a number of huge plays. They've given up 10 or 11 plays over 40 yards this year. They're one of the worst long play pass defenses in the league. It seems like a great recipe for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, if you ask me. So I'm going to take the Dolphins on the road. I'm going to take the 3 points from you.
So the Dolphins have a 6-7 record coming into this. The Texans have been sputtering, as we know, 8-5 at this point, 4-2 at home. I think, the week off, the rest, they'll try to make some adjustments where they can on the offensive line. Look, I like the Texans. Don't the Texans actually, Brad, have one of your favorite running backs in the National Football League and one Joe Mixon? You're going against Joe Mixon. It's unbelievable.
And I was going to make a comment about the Dolphins as well. If you watch the Dolphins, they're not the explosive offense that we expected at the beginning of the year. Everything is short passes, it stinks and dunks, and they really haven't opened it up. You very rarely see, Tyreek Hill going deep and catching the ball. Everything seems to be within 15 yards, and I think a lot of that is to protect Tua and his headache problems. And so, but this is a different kind of defense. This is a defense that is susceptible to the deep ball, and I see him catching at least 1 or 2 long balls this week. And the Texans paying the price. I just don't like that Texans team at all. I don't think they're playing well. The offensive line is terrible. CJ Stroud is a shadow of what he was last year. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I just think they're a better football team.
Look, I think Protect Tua sounds like a John Grisham spy novel. So, anyways.
All right, my next game is Indianapolis at the Broncos. The Broncos are 5-point favorites in this one. I think the Broncos are going to win the game, Dave. I just thought the 5 points was a little bit much for my liking. So I'm going to take Indianapolis. They kind of need to win. It's desperation mode for them. The Broncos are good. I just don't know how good they are. I like their young quarterback, but at times he gets a little erratic throwing the ball. So I'm going to take Indy. I think they need it. I think actually the young quarterback in Indianapolis is starting to play better football. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I thought he was never going to make it as an NFL player. He started to show me some things. I think they continue to keep that going. I do believe the Broncos win on a last-second field goal. So I'm gonna take the 5 in Indianapolis.
Yeah, all he's shown me is that he could potentially have a long career as a backup quarterback in the National Football League, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't even have that opportunity. The Broncos are also a little bit like the Rams this year. You sort of don't know exactly what you're going to get. It's like that Forrest Gump box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get from week to week. So at the end of the day, I like the Broncos. I'm just going to go ahead and take the Broncos in this game. It's a home game. I think if they win, they're going to win by a lot, not by a little. If it's a close game, they could potentially even lose it. I know this isn't cogent analysis at this point, but like it is one of those things where I think it's also a coaching issue with the Broncos on the offensive side of the fence. So I believe Sean Payton is just going to run circles around the Indianapolis Colts defense. Hence why I'm going with the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the Broncos are a better football team. There's nothing about Indianapolis that really interests me at all.
Yeah.
But that offense, that quarterback has played a little bit better football as of late. He's gotten a little more accurate on his downfield passing. He can take off and run at any time. I think the Broncos are the better football team. I think they have a better coach. All signs point to them winning the game. It was just the 5 points that I felt uncomfortable with.
All right. Packers at your Seahawks. I believe this is the Sunday night football game. Brad, Packers on the road, actually favored by 3 against the Seahawks. I think that every time I watch Jordan Love play football, I have to say, for the most part, I'm pleasantly surprised. I think he's a way better quarterback than I probably realized he actually is. I like the Packers. I like them a lot on the road in this game. I'm not in any way sold on the Seahawks team. The NFL script writers would certainly have the Packers winning this game on the road, with the Seahawks losing, so that things tighten up a little bit in that NFC Western division. So I look at this game and I think the Packers are going to find a way to win, and they're going to do it by more than 3.
Dave, I was listening to NFL XM radio this week or something like that. I don't know how you say it, but there was a call-in that had really an interesting stat. It's a little bit of this game and a little bit of the next game that I'm going to talk about Jordan Love. And she said that the caller said that Jordan Love has thrown 100 less passes than Caleb Williams this year, and he's thrown twice as many interceptions as Caleb Williams. I found that to be a very interesting stat. Now, he's thrown more touchdowns as well, but as we all know, Caleb Williams is getting killed on every play. His offensive line is terrible. I'm not entirely sold yet on Jordan Love. I'm just not there yet. Seahawks is a tough place to play. Packers are favored on the road. I don't like that. I'm going to take the Seahawks at home. I'm not convinced the Packers are a great football team. I'm just not, Dave.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word great when it comes to the Packers. Here's Jordan Love's quarterback ratings over the last four games: 111, 129, 107, and 113. I mean, he's a streaky quarterback. He'd be the perfect quarterback, if you will, for the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni, who's a streaky head coach as well. So I he's in one of those streaks where he's playing pretty well. The ratings are good on his performance. And if you go back 5 or 6 weeks, then you end up with the lower ratings for him. So I think he's heading in the right direction.
All right, that leads us into my last game, which is the Bears at the Vikings. Vikings are 7-point favorites, which, they're starting to get those lines are starting to go up again. The Vikings are starting to win games again. The lines are going up.
It's too many points to take the Vikes,
Well, anyway, so it's, Sam Darnold, Dave, has got the Vikings at 11-2. And we didn't really touch on this very much last week, but I was a little puzzled when the Vikings brought in Daniel Jones, and it makes you wonder, what's the future look like for Darnold? Is he going to get a big payday from somebody out there? Are the Vikings going to pay him? Where's the future lie? And the lion's share that people say, well, McCarthy's the quarterback of the future, and maybe Daniel Jones fits in there somehow or another as a backup. We're not really sure, but the whole Daniel Jones thing just kind of threw me off in a loop. And I thought, Sam Darnold's 11-2 with this team. That's your quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, are you expecting JJ McCarthy to come in and go 11-2? He's never thrown a pass in the NFL. He comes from a running offense in college. He's probably never ran a legitimate 2-minute offense in his life. And you got a guy that's red hot. Sam Darnold has had a passer rating of over 100 more times than any quarterback in the league this year. He's got the number 3 QB rating in the league. Isn't that the guy you should pay, Dave?
I have come to the conclusion, Brad, as painstakingly as this is for me as a JJ McCarthy guy, that you are correct. At least based at like if the season ended today, I would absolutely pay Sam Darnold. I'd try to get him on a maybe a 3-year deal, 2-year guaranteed deal, and pay him. I've heard everything this week about, just franchise tag him, give him his 45 million that he'd make on a franchise tag. So look, at the end of the day, I don't think Sam Darnold necessarily wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League right now. I think Sam Darnold is still shell shocked from what's happened in his career. So I think he'll give the team a discount to actually stay with them to some extent. So I could be wrong about all of that, but at the end of the day, I would give Sam a 2, maybe 3-year deal, 2 years guaranteed to try to keep him in the fold.
Yeah, I don't think there's any discounts coming, Dave. And I think his agent will make sure that doesn't happen because there's a lot of spots opening this year.
It's the Minnesota nice in me, Brad.
Yeah, well, yeah, I got a whole other thing I can go off on that, but
yeah.
that would be a whole different subject for a different day. But I don't think there's any niceties when it comes to contracts. I think he's going to get, you look at the contracts now. I was just looking last week, NFL, he's going to get $45-50 million a year from somebody.
Yeah.
And the reality is that JJ McCarthy's never thrown a ball, Dave. Yeah. We don't know. That's an unproven commodity. And the guy you got there right now is 11-2, and he's a proven commodity. But anyways, you did say something that was critical there. There is still a lot of time left in the season. Yeah. Things can go haywire in a hurry. People can figure out the Vikings and their offense. I think the Bears kind of do figure them out this week. I'm going to take the Bears in the 7 points, Dave, and kind of a weird twist. I don't like the line of 7. I think it's too much. I think the Vikings will win the game. Darnold has just been too perfect lately. He's
Yeah.
been too perfect for me. And like you, I still have PTSD of when being with the Jets, right? And
Oh, yeah.
so, as good as he's been, I like the kid on the other side. He's playing great football. He hardly ever throws an interception. Last time he played the Vikings a couple of weeks ago, he threw for 330 yards or something
Yeah.
without any offensive line. And so I think they make it interesting, the Bears. I really do. I don't like the 7. I'm going to take the Bears in the 7 points.
My dog is disagreeing with you, Brad. I'm gonna go ahead and take the Vikes in this one. Look, Caleb, it's been like a month and a half since Caleb Williams has actually thrown an interception. That changes this weekend or on Monday night. The Bears got absolutely killed in their last game. You know how these interim coaches go. Usually, if an interim coach is going to perform, it's going to happen in the first week. And I think what you're starting to see is across the board, a lot of people outside of Caleb starting to quit on the Chicago Bears team. So I like the Vikings in this. I hate that it's 7, but I think the line is justified, especially based on the performance that we saw out of Chicago recently. The reason Caleb Williams hasn't thrown more interceptions, Brad, is he has no time to actually throw interceptions. So he's barely, I'm really impressed actually with Caleb Williams so far this year, considering everything.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, when you're laying on your back, it's hard to throw an interception, right? But I see the Bears, and I've just been perpetually puzzled all season long at how they underuse Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have I sent you a text at halftime and I go, Keenan Allen's got no catches, or he's got 1 catch, and then all of a sudden they have to kind of throw the ball to get back in it, and he starts catching balls, and they go down the field and they score. And it's like, yeah, that's what you should be doing. He's your best wide receiver. I'm sorry, it's not DJ Moore. It's Keenan Allen. You just got to use him right. He's not a throw him out there 25, 30 yards down the field. He's a guy that goes underneath. And the Vikings give up a lot of underneath stuff. They're not great between the 20s defensively. They give up a ton of yardage, but they bend, but they don't break. So I think it's a lot of field goals in this game. That's what I see it being. So I'm going to take the Bears. I'm going to take the 7.
I have to say, Brad has sent me so many Keenan Allen text messages that Apple Intelligence jumped in, Brad, and asked me if I was being spammed. All right, moving on to the last game of the week, which is the Falcons at the Raiders. I'm okay with 2 Monday Night Football games early in the year, but I hate 2 Monday Night Football games towards the end of the season. It makes no sense to me, National Football League, at all, especially when you're giving us the Falcons at the Raiders, and we all know how that's all panned out. Over under on this is 44. I had originally thought about taking the over, but that does seem crazy. I'm going to go ahead and change my mind, Brad, and go with the under in this one. I don't even know who the Raiders are going to put out at quarterback at this point. They are a complete mess of an organization.
I agree entirely. I was waiting. I just made this selection just a couple of minutes ago. I was actually going to wait and see what you said to see if you could convince me to take that over, because you originally had the over.
Yeah, I did.
And then I thought, Kirk Cousins is playing terrible football right now. A lot of this and not many of these, right? And so the Raiders, like you said, who's going to watch this game? And what's the appeal of putting this on a Monday night game? Do you really need another option other than the Bears and the Vikings? I don't quite understand it.
Sense.
So I'm going to take the under. I thought the 44 was like pretty high for these two teams. They just don't score. If I could see the Falcons winning the game, but I don't see it being much more of a than a 21-17 game, something like that. And it was kind of a ho-hum over-under number. I didn't really like it to begin with, but I was waiting to see what you said, and you convinced me. Go with the under.
Go with the under. I'm glad I could convince you on that. Yeah. Look, maybe Kirk Cousins wakes up and has a couple good drives in this game, but like the Falcons have just been sputtering on offense for a month and a half now. And it's not just Kirk, but I mean, he has to stop throwing interceptions. The Raiders have a decent secondary, so I'm expecting, probably 2 picks in this game. If I was playing some sort of strange parlay, I might actually include that in it. The Raiders are just a mess of an organization at this point. They're going to have their 3rd head coach in 3 years during this offseason. If you do another year of Antonio Pierce, I would be absolutely shocked. There'd be, at that point, no longer any commitment to excellence.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of thought Antonio Pierce is dead man walking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they really never gave him the tools to win. You can't enter the season without a legitimate starting quarterback and then just send your best wide receiver packing, 5 weeks into the year and expect there to be any enthusiasm whatsoever. My question is will they be able to hold on to like Max Crosby? Like, I look at the Raiders and I go, they have 2 of the great players in the league between Max Crosby and this new tight end they got, the rookie, right?
Yeah.
But there's just, other than that, the cupboard's bare, and Antonio Pierce wants to come in and play this defensive style where you run the ball, and it's really not something that's suited for the year 2024.
And they're not staffed up to play that way anyways. And it's hard to, sometimes you've got to win with what you have. And that's been the problem with Antonio Pierce as a head coach, is he's got a strategy he's trying to implement with players that are not the right fit for that particular strategy. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, and you got to wonder too, Dave, at what point is Michael Penix going to get in the game for the Falcons? I mean, are they going to wait until they're out of the playoff hunt? Because he's going to be the quarterback of the future for that organization. It was a little puzzling move to begin the season when, they drafted a quarterback and then they signed Kirk Cousins or vice versa. I don't remember what order that was in, but it was always kind of a strange move to begin with. And if he's there, Cousins solely for the purpose of getting the kid ready to play, then at some point in time, Penix is going to have some time to play.
All right. Well, I agree with you on Penix, Mr. Hoysef. We have to get out of here. For the gods of odds, that is Brad Hoysef over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBow up in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.